There's no easy way to say this. I'm going to be talking at length for multiple minutes about games that are near and dear to me and why they are near and dear to me, which includes talking about the stories and experiences I had with them. I'm going to be very blunt. I'll be talking about spoilers in varying amounts of detail. So I'm just going to say, if you don't want to hear spoilers for a game, I will both audibly say and visually show the game I will be talking about, and you can use the chapter feature or skip to the listed time code to avoid any spoilers you do not wish to hear. Also, and this should be plenty obvious, but I will be getting very personal here, more personal than the stories and anecdotes that I talked about before, almost bearing my soul to you. So if you don't want any of that, just skip this segment or even just leave the video. There will be no test at the end of this video, so do not worry about writing down notes. And now, we begin. Nier Automata is a game that changed the chemicals in my brain in a way that so few games could. The moment I spent more than an hour with it, I felt myself becoming enraptured in this world unlike our own, but still recognizable as Earth. I became engrossed in this conflict between the human-designed androids and the alien-crafted machine lifeforms. The more I played as 2B and 9S, the more I began to really absorb what was happening. I could feel that I was not getting the whole picture as 2B, and questions I had could be answered when playing 9S. I felt genuine fear and dread, and overall just a pure sense of melancholy as I absorbed the horrors of war, the inhumane tactics used by the machine lifeforms in order to have some kind of upper hand, and the toll of it all on the androids that may as well be humans with metal instead of flesh, and oil instead of blood. A machine lifeform discovers the meaning of vengeance and enacts its revenge for its fallen kin, spurring an android to continue the cycle of violence in memory of their fallen ally killed by a vengeance-seeking robot. A machine lifeform figures that a way to achieve enlightenment is to devote oneself to martial arts and the endless quest of self-improvement, going so far as to physically change himself to become bigger, stronger, and more dangerous, and eventually die in battle as he feels the only path to heaven is to die by your hands, the student he trains to become powerful enough to beat him. A young android couple try to escape the war and start a new life, either on their own or with a colony of other AWOL androids. They are betrayed and beaten by their would-be savior, with the man thinking they should continue to run, with the woman thinking the best option is to reformat themselves and return to the resistance. There's a disagreement about whether or not they'd be the same people, but they agree it's the right thing to do, only for the woman to reject her reformatting, as this is the 6th time she's had to do it to her partner. This time she plans on converting him into a combat model. The human condition is on full display in this game, in all of its ugliness, its beauty, its horror, its love, its acceptance of death, and its vow to keep going on. The mystery of what the game taught me about myself still lingers, and the time to answer it is right now. In the final 5 or 10 hours of the game, you begin what is colloquially called Route C/D. To some, it is when the true game begins, as you're not playing through the parts of the story with Adam, Eve, Simone, Angels, and Grun again. You're continuing the story, continuing a descent into madness as 2B receives a fatal blow and an infection that threatens to kill her forever, with no backup body. She asks that her life be snuffed out by A2, and that she carries out her final mission. 9S sees this and vows to kill A2, though what he plans to do after is unknown, but the possible answers aren't very good. A2 continues her journey of killing every machine she can in the hopes that she can finally finish her mission. 9S continues his journey of killing every machine he can find in the hopes that once he's done, it'll only be A2 left. These two people are so deeply broken by a system and people that lied to them, and the only truth either of them can believe in is that one of them has to die. A2 can knock out 9S and sacrifice herself to take down the giant machine tower, finally feeling at peace now that her mission is completed, and she can join her fallen sisters in the afterlife. 9S can kill A2 in a gruesome, vengeful way, but finds himself falling onto her blade as he tries to make her suffer suffer. A2 passes peacefully. 9S writhes like an animal in a deep pain that is trying to escape the hurt before death comes for him too. As he lays there in a pool of his and A2's blood, he hears his memories one last time, wondering what was it all for? What was the point of all the fighting? Was there a point to anything? Why create the desire, the longing for the touch of humans if they've been extinct for hundreds, if not thousands of years? He then realizes that the tower isn't actually a cannon meant to destroy the moon, and with it, the servers that house human history as data. It fires an arc, something that carries the data of all the machine life forms, including Adam and Eve. Adam invites 9S to join them, eternally soaring through a never-ending sky in search of a world to spread the joys of humanity as machines have learned it. You can either accept or deny it. The end result is that the arc fires, and with all machine life forms flying far away, ending the war. The real meat of the ending, the part that affected me so, comes during the end credits of the ending you get second, either C or D. A memory leak occurs and the pods discuss whether deletion of all data is ethical, the conclusion being to perform a data salvage instead. This is presented as a daunting task with an unacceptable margin for failure. Yet, should you choose to continue, you are then greeted with one last shoot-'em-up segment, shooting and destroying the names found in the credits as one last mix of Weight of the World plays. The pods discuss whether or not they experienced real human consciousness when connected with the androids before falling silent as you shoot every job in the credits and every name assigned to those roles. The vocals kick in and you continue shooting, eventually finding the task to be genuinely difficult. You fail. You're set to the beginning of the credits to start again. The failure screen taunts you with questions like, "Give up here? Is it all pointless? Do you admit there is no meaning to the world?" The screen behind these questions are peppered with statements left by other players of the game, encouraging you to not give up. Eventually, after enough failures, you're given a rescue offer from a player. Should you accept it, you're empowered with 6 extra ships to shoot alongside you, forming a shield to protect you. Eventually, you defeat the end credits, losing some of the ships in the process with the message of player's data has been lost hanging in your mind. The pods then discuss with each other how life is all about the struggle within the cycle of life and death. A future is not given to you. You must take it for yourself. This is when they ask you probably the most important series of questions in the game. You're asked to leave an encouraging message like the other players who failed multiple times during the final end credit sequence. Your failures and suffering at the hands of said sequence are both acknowledged and understood, which leads to the question of whether or not you're interested in helping the weak. You're offered the chance to save someone somewhere in the world during the final end credits, in exchange for the deletion of your save data. All your items, weapons, quests, data logs, everything you've worked hard to get, all gone. It's a retread of a similar concept found in the original Nier, but taken one step farther. You're not just sacrificing your existence to save a fictional person, you're sacrificing your existence to save a real person, to help alleviate the pain of failing and starting over. Your save data manifests as one of the ships that circles around a player, and when it's destroyed, your data is gone forever. What hits me in my heart of hearts the most is the line of questioning that follows. Pod 042 asks you if you still wish to rescue someone, a total stranger, in spite of your lost data. This person will be selected at complete random, and it's possible this person will be someone you intensely dislike. You may not receive thanks for your efforts. Some may say your efforts are purely for show, but I was truly sure of what I wanted. I finished the game on stream in 2020, and I was holding up fairly well. It wasn't until that statement, that I may not receive thanks for my efforts, and that some may say my efforts are purely for show, that was when I let myself finally cry. It wasn't until that moment that I realized that I really, truly love everyone in this world, and I would sacrifice so much for so many people. There was a friend who was born with a physical disability that left them with weak legs. They lived their life normally. In fact, sometimes they'd go out running, but their weakness would creep into their mind like a slinking shadow, trying to make them deny the fact that they can live a happy life with this disability. They would curse their legs, being weak and unable to do hard physical tasks. They would hate their legs. I have, on multiple occasions, offered them a hypothetical fix by transplanting my legs onto them, knowing it's impossible but showing that I want to help. A different friend of mine suffered an accident that left their nerves almost constantly on fire, a type of chronic pain that seems incurable, only managed with painkillers. In their darkest moments, racked with pain that seemed almost endless and isolating themselves out of fear of snapping at others, I offered to them both my bones and my nerves, knowing it's impossible, but trying to help somehow. I've told multiple trans men that I've been friends with that I would happily transplant my privates onto them and live without mine just so they could be happy. I was willing to sacrifice life and limb for the sake of others, to show them that things can be good, and even if they don't believe it, I'd find a way to make it better for them somehow. I wanted to help those with less privileges than me, those more disenfranchised than me. Nier Automata held up a mirror to me and told me that I had something of a martyr's complex, and while I need to keep it in check so I don't actually damage myself or irrevocably hurt myself and those around me, I felt happy about this. I knew what I am, and I'm glad Nier Automata showed me in no uncertain terms just how much I love others. We return once again to Dragon Quest XI. I've talked about how the world is so lovingly crafted and feels new yet lived in, so there's little I can really talk about except the characters themselves. In Dragon Quest XI, you create a party with all these unique individuals who all have something to prove or some tie to your destiny. You meet Eric in the dungeons of Heliodor as you were locked up by the king for being accused of bringing chaos and calamity wherever you go, as the luminary is always followed by the Dark Lord. Eric, despite having met you in rather unsavory circumstances, knows that you're important and sticks with you, becoming one of your closest allies in the process, learning how much he's willing to trust you with important tasks and with the duty of saving the world, so long as he's on your side. After helping them with the situation involving a jar-themed lizard man and being kidnapped in a sauna, Veronica and Serena join your party as twin mages who were told to find and protect the luminary with their lives, acting as the fiery loose cannon and the moral backbone of the party respectively. Soon after helping a cowardly prince come clean about being a coward, the flamboyant and fabulous Silvando joins your party, having made a vow a long time ago to someone about making 1 million people smile in his travels, quickly making himself known as the heart and soul of the party. But like most comic relief characters, there's a hidden sadness and regret to him that he hides with his antics and joyous nature. After infiltrating and exposing the inner workings of a prizefighter's win streak, you join forces with Jade and Rab, two individuals tied to the past of the Luminary, with Jade being the princess of Heliodor who would often visit the Luminary's family in their kingdom of Dundersill, and Rab being the former king of Dundersill and the Luminary's grandfather on his mother's side. Despite being a duo of martial artists that feel like a grandparent/child relationship, they're willing to show you just how much your memory has meant to them, as they believed for many years that you had died. Throughout your journey through Eritrea, you develop this found family into something more meaningful and actually like a family. Exploring the world and helping others, whether it be on a personal level like delivering letters back and forth, or on a community level like killing a giant monster squid to save a group of fishermen in a seafaring village. There's a sense that these guys started out as a bunch of people out on their own journey, just teaming up with each other before becoming close personal friends, sharing hopes and dreams and jokes and regrets. Even after countless trials and tragedies, nothing can really break this group apart, not even one of them being turned into a fish, one of them starting a clown parade, one of them losing their memories, one of them being thrown into an It's a Wonderful Life-esque dream coma, and one of them being trapped in a monster dimension to be some horrible womanizer monster's plaything, much to the chagrin of his giant muscle wife. In fact, these people are such good friends that you have multiple instances where you can just stop what you're doing and just talk with your friends. Just hang out with them. It reminds me of the various adventures I've gone on with my friends as an adult. In 2016, me and my partners at the time met up for the first time in Oregon, and we explored the city of Eugene and the various landmarks found within driving distance of the city. We explored a farmer's market, we visited a naturally occurring hot spring, we got lost in the woods. And yet, in spite of getting lost and having the car run out of gas, we had each other and truly didn't have a care in the world, spending time with people we loved and cared about on the road near the Oregonian wilderness. In the summer of 2019, I met with my partner at the time to spend the summer in the greater Chicagoland area of Illinois. I visited museums, tourist traps, the zoo. I met the being in person and whispered curses and hexes into its ear. I even experienced my first ever backyard 4th of July fireworks show, complete with fireflies. It was a magical time that unfortunately was tainted by the two of us breaking up a month after that trip. In the cusp of autumn 2019, me and a group of friends from college went on a trip to a limited meet and greet with Hideo Kojima and Yoji Shinkawa at a local GameStop to celebrate the release of Death Stranding. The line was long, the heat was moderate to slightly uncomfortable. There were people in cosplay and holding various Kojima paraphernalia in the hopes that he'd autograph them, only to be met with the more boring conclusion that this meet and greet is more of a meet and sign this provided poster. Nevertheless, the adventures of going there, getting in line, and seeing the two responsible for making Metal Gear Solid so unique and groundbreaking, and who worked on Death Stranding as well, it was an afternoon to remember. I even still have the official Sony branded wristbands given to people in line to signify who was getting in and who was unfortunately having to be turned away. In 2021, I met with some of my closest online friends in North Carolina to spend time with them near the end of summer. It was the farthest I've ever been away from home without my family, yet I felt more loved and seen by those I viewed as family without being family than I had ever been. From going to the beach and helping someone with thalassophobia challenge that fear by getting into the water, to visiting a beachside summer home community, to even visiting various upscale restaurants and tourist-friendly stores, I felt that those that I spent my time with cared about me and each other like a family. I felt as close as the hero's comrades in Dragon Quest XI. I felt like nothing could get in the way of me and those that I cared about and cherished. My time with the Final Fantasy series is admittedly pretty sparse. My first full playthrough of a title was Final Fantasy III on the Nintendo DS, and, as I've been told, it's not a great place to start. It's an exceedingly difficult, almost unfair game with mechanics not present in the original NES game that make it both easier and harder to play. Regardless, I beat it and felt some sort of sense of victory, but it felt unsatisfying. As the years passed, I would glance at Final Fantasy VII a few times, and I even touched Final Fantasy XIII for extended periods of time. But none of these games really gave me any kind of feeling that I was looking for, being an adventure in a grand world that I wouldn't be able to explore the likes of in any other game. At least, not until Final Fantasy XIV. However, my journey didn't begin so easily compared to others. I tried to play this game twice through my PlayStation 4, signing up for the Nier Unlimited free trial twice, though it's mostly because I couldn't be asked to remember the original login. It didn't stick with me because the controls were difficult to wrap my head around, and admittedly, I was not a fan of beginning my adventure in the Green Forest zone. It wasn't until my third and final attempt on PC that it finally clicked. I created a cat girl named Amatista Briar, changed to the more lore-accurate Kamatista Briar because I'm a big dork nerd. Chose to begin as a marauder so I could begin in Limsa Lominsa, and realized that tanking was too scary for me, so I changed into being a rogue. The rest is history. My friends and friends of friends helped me through my first dungeons, holding my hand as I did ineffectual tactics like dancing around enemies to slice and dice and throw knives at them, teamed up with me to defeat my first major trial boss, told me horror stories of the tedious fetch quests just to continue the story, talked with me as I finished my first ever run of the Praetorium, jammed with me as I listened to the phenomenal music that only gets better with each passing piece of story content, helped in getting my first extreme trial mount, and became obsessed with the song that you hear while writing it. helped me work hard to obtain a sweet piece of in-game gear that was actually impossible to obtain in the US, even with cash monies, walked with me through my first and favorite raid series, and becoming obsessed with the concept of the icon Alexander. I could not have enjoyed this game without my friends helping me along the way. It's very easy to say that an MMO is on the favorite games list for someone because the memories made with the friends you played with, and that's mostly true here. But the story in this game is one that I found myself getting engrossed in. Even for all its shortcomings, A Realm Reborn gripped me with the world it inhabited and the characters you meet. From the practical and intelligent Y'shtola, to the womanizing pretty man Thancred, to the no-nonsense fun police Papalimo, to the absolutely flawless dits of a beauty of a woman Ida. The adventures had as the Warrior of Light with their friends, the Scions of the Seventh Dawn, made for an extremely entertaining adventure. So entertaining that I made my decision to buy a subscription and the full package before reaching the second free expansion. It was such a fun adventure until it all began to unravel at the end of A Realm Reborn and Heavensward began. The tale of dragons, their oppressors, and a 100-year war hooked me in so much that I was convinced that this was going to become one of the greatest stories ever, and I wasn't even a quarter done with the available content. Stormblood began, and I felt myself mourning losses and getting even more emotionally attached, looking at these people like they were my own family members. I spent significant amounts of time rooting for Lys because in retrospect, so few people would. I celebrated the liberation of an occupied country and prepared for Shadowbringers, what was said to be the peak of FF14, and really peak fiction overall. And I was not lied to. Immediately, I'm thrust into this isekai story heavily inspired by Final Fantasy III, the one I began my adventures with, and I became completely assimilated in adventures found within the first, becoming the Warrior of Darkness, and enjoying the antics and various schemes of the greatest villain in fiction, fighting back as I staked my claim on the idea that even if we aren't immortal and experience the greatest of life's pleasures, we had as much of a right to live as any other creature. To this day, because of what happened there, I still cannot hear Eternal Wind from either Final Fantasy III or Final Fantasy XIV without feeling some kind of emotion welling within me. The sound of a journey ready to be had and a journey finally reaching its conclusion. The sound of one so infatuated with the idea of the Warrior of Light that they chose to follow in their footsteps to become a hero within their own right and affect the lives the way you did. Truly a grand adventure. But it wasn't over yet. To say that Endwalker was the best piece of fiction I consumed yet is to speak a slight amount of hyperbole, but only slight. I expected a conclusion to a story I'd been following for months and devoured like an animal, but I wasn't expecting to be broken down, put back together, and had my boo-boos kissed the way Endwalker did. I got a proper ending to the conflict that had arisen before I even began playing, faced a past that I wasn't privy to just the magnitude of, encountered the person I'd very strongly call my #1 favorite fictional character ever, reached the edge of the universe, faced the end, and was left standing afterwards. I felt my love for this game burn deep within me and wanted to share this love with the friends who were there guiding me from the beginning. But those friends are gone. Those who showed me just how big and amazing and beautiful this great big world is are all gone, and I drove them away. I have no great big story as to where they went or what I did. I just have the memories of those I viewed as family and the times we spent together. All I can do now is keep this love for this game and the memories made from it within me. I just have to feel my love held deep inside me as the songs To the Edge, Oblivion, Locust flow together, Answers, and especially To the Distance echoes in my heart. I only hope that those friends I spent time with in this game, both personally and known only online, have been doing well. I wish that they could be here to share in the joy and love that this game inspires at least one last time. But I'm left with unanswered feelings and unfinished memories to be made. I ask that you do not pity me, as I've made peace with the fact that the friends who got me into this game, my family away from family, are not coming back. but it doesn't make the echoes in my heart any quieter. There's little to do now except see how the next segment answers this one. Before it's time to finish this essay and reach the ending, let's discuss one last game. Of the 4 games discussed, this is the one I was most excited to play and reach the conclusion of. I was so excited that I streamed the entirety of it during my time on Twitch. In fact, it was probably my favorite game to stream on Twitch to react to in real time as I saw things both familiar and new. That game is Nier. Replicant. The long-awaited remaster of the original Nier game from 2010, this kind of remake completely fixes all the gameplay issues that made its predecessor difficult, sticky, and a slog to play through. Admittedly, I'd like to have been there to play the original to say that I had done it, but back in 2010 my Xbox 360 was busy playing things like Crackdown 2, Bioshock, the original Xbox port of Mega Man Anniversary Collection, Scott Pilgrim the Game, and Marvel vs. Capcom 2. But when the time came for Nier to get a remaster-esque remake, I immediately jumped on the opportunity to pre-order it, the game that escaped my grasp and I had to culturally osmose for all these years. And as I played with my friend watching, as they're a big Yoko Taro enjoyer but had not experienced the original Nier story, I found myself falling for this dark, dangerous, and dying, yet beautiful, benevolent, beloved world that Nier and his friends inhabited. I found myself laughing and learning from Grimoire Vice's quips and intelligent responses. I found myself hurting watching Emile go from this wide-eyed innocent baby child into this monstrous yet sweet skeleton child, crying to whoever will listen about how much his body looking the way it does hurts him and makes him hate himself the way he hated how his eyes petrified anyone they looked at. I found myself genuinely falling for the foul-mouthed, ultra-violent, genuinely misunderstood Kaine, and found her journey from being discriminated against to trying to keep this monster dwelling within her satiated with murder before realizing that her love for Nier is too much for the shade within her to handle, heartbreaking yet beautiful. And I found myself understanding yet hating the titular Nier for letting the duty of protecting Yona and his friends blind him to the plight of the shades, never understanding that there are people like him and he's becoming the true monster of humanity, unknowingly sacrificing humanity and dooming it to its eventual extinction. Nier is a game that says we should learn to understand people, put ourselves in each other's shoes, because by understanding why people do the things they do, we become closer and can avoid needless bloodshed. By understanding each other's perspectives, we can thrive as humans and learn to work together, love each other, and take care of each other. But this isn't why Nier Replicant is here. No, the real reason why it's here is found within the addition added to the remaster, Ending E. This is your true final warning that if you haven't played the final route in Nier Replicant and don't want to be spoiled on new content, then heed this final warning and leave. In Route E, you play as Kaine, years after Nier made his final sacrifice to erase himself from existence. No one knows who this man is they keep dreaming of, but he won't leave them alone. Kaine feels like there's someone or something missing from her life. When she goes out to kill things to vent her frustrations, she learns that the Forest of Myth has been attacked by an unknown force and goes to investigate, only to learn that some mysterious administrators have been viewing her and her friends' adventures since the beginning, poking and prodding at the group to keep going, egging her on to investigate this mysterious yet familiar area some more, with the promises of answers waiting at the end. In the middle of combat and asking for an explanation for everything, Emile mysteriously returns and joins her in trying to figure out what's going on. It's not until she's faced with physical manifestations of her trauma, the worst day of her life, and an illusion that seems sunny and rosy on the outset before everything melts away into something horrific, that she's joined by a representation of Grimoire Vice that empowers her with more magic than she's ever had, erasing the form her trauma and pain had taken, as well as the administrators, freeing Nier from whatever nebulous prison he was held in. The game ends with a giant lunar tear growing from the earth and Emile flying around to peer inside as it blooms, seeing Kaine cradling a reborn, younger version of Nier on the stamen of the flower. The final words of the game before the final credits sequence are spoken aloud by both Kaine and Emil.
Our journey may have been meaningless.
Our past may have been a mistake.
But we're not going back.
Even if this world comes to an end.
Because this is the world with the people we cherish.
When I finally arrived at this ending, I thought of it merely as a nice way to finish this game. Something new I hadn't seen, but felt satisfied in experiencing. During the following year, I got it. How I read this scene was Kaine and Emil understanding the mistakes they have made, the sins they committed, the countless lives lost and will continue to be losing. There's no way to be forgiven for something as grievous as dooming all of humanity to a slow, painful extinction with no way of stopping it. Yet, there's nothing to be done but keep going. If they were to be tried for a crime that cataclysmic, what would the end result even be? How can you rectify something as final as the effective death of the human race? You can't. And because you can't, you must continue to live your life, if not for a specific goal, then for someone. If you're denied forgiveness or even a fitting punishment, then all you can do is keep living on. You're only given one life in this world, and it's not over until it's over. I've lived a life of general privilege for most of my life. I'm a person of color with white-passing skin. I keep to myself so my sexuality and gender identities don't become a topic of discussion or discourse. I've lived in my family home for most of my life. I've never had to wonder where I'd be sleeping next or where my next meal came from. I've never had to make ends meet. And yet, the isolation I put myself through, the darkness I put myself in, is comparable to others, yet never exactly the same. No one ever hurts the same, and no one ever recovers the same. I know that the idea of being denied forgiveness is one that seems rather foreign to some, but it's something that leaves you feeling empty, unfinished. It's a part of yourself that you never notice is gone until it's too late, and it makes you feel like you've become less. It makes you feel incomplete, like you can't be a person again until you receive this forgiveness. It makes you contemplate solutions to ease or permanently remove this pain, but your mind thinks it's less to make yourself hurt less and more a way to finally be forgiven, causing enough hurt to yourself to make them forgive you. But that's not how that works, and you just have to live. Live on and keep living, because it gets better. I didn't believe it for a few months. It wasn't until a medical emergency distracted me from my emotional pain with crippling physical pain, something dire enough to almost kill me. Afterwards, I'd started living for something. I didn't know what it was yet, but I knew I had to find something to live for. I reconnected with friends new and somewhat old, felt my depression smooth out into something more enjoyable and less dour to be around. I still feel like I haven't gone back to that person I was before, but I acknowledge that that person made mistakes that they can't take back, and the person that I am now is something I will continue to live for. Anyway, if video games can make me think about something like this, then they gotta be at least pretty good. Video games as a medium are capable of narratives, music tracks, and unique viewer-medium communication that can't be replicated by movies, televisions, or books. When you've played as many games, good or bad, as I have in the past all my years, you learn to appreciate certain things like tropes and cliches and idiosyncrasies that are only really seen in games. There are so many that I haven't talked about that are up there for favorite games ever, like Lisa, Persona 4, Undertale, Dragon Ball Z Budokai 3, Bayonetta, Shovel Knight, or even Parappa the Rapper 2 that I can continue to talk about for literally minutes. But we're fast approaching the arbitrary time limit. One thing I'd like to talk about before leaving is the coincidence that all but one game I talked about extensively in some way are Japanese. I don't really have much of an explanation. Japanese games have been in my life much longer than Western games, and the only one I'd bother to really talk about is 2064 Read-Only Memories. In fact, on my original top 50 favorite games list, exactly 26, but though technically 28, are all Japanese, more than half of them. I'm sorry, what can I say? Japan makes good games, I guess. But with that being said, I'd like to know about games that mean a lot to you, whether they're formative, your favorite game, they have your favorite soundtrack, or were there for you when you were at your lowest. And now it's time to close the book. I'm CheezVT, and until elsewhere and someday we encounter each other like this again, remember, even those born unwise need not resign to perish empty. I'll see you later.